Hey, what's happening, everybody? It's me, Crazyfrankie, and I'd like to welcome you to my Week 4 key game picks. Before we talk about Week number 4, oh boy, it was a crazy Week 3, I will say. I mean, you could pick out a couple things that were definitely the main headline in Week number 3, but to me, a couple things that do come into mind is the number 70. 70 points that the Miami Dolphins just demolished, destroyed, whatever term you want to use, completely destroying the Broncos 70-20. They won by 50 points. And a lot of people saying, boy, is that Miami Dolphins team really good? Not necessarily. I mean, if you look at the Broncos, losing by 50 points and all that, their defense just flat out just quit on them. You allow 70 points, and then the Denver offense was lucky enough to manage 20, and they lose by 50. That's an ultimate humiliation, and really, the Denver Broncos are definitely up there with the New York Jets as one of the worst NFL teams this year. And given the fact that the Broncos were one of the worst teams last year, I don't know if this Bronco team could top last year's Broncos of last season. And this is with Russell Wilson. And given the fact that the one that's coaching this year's team is Sean Payton, a former Super Bowl winning head coach who have taken the New Orleans Saints to the playoffs many times as his tenure there. Obviously, he had a good quarterback in Drew Brees. I mean, to be humiliated like that, that's just embarrassing. Look, Russell Wilson is not the same player anymore. That Bronco team is an ultimate nightmare. It's the ultimate joke. I think they're way worse than the Jets. Even though the Jets losing to the Patriots for the 15th time in a row. I mean, obviously Zach Wilson is not the quarterback to help lead the team after having Aaron Rodgers and then him getting hurt, ending his season. The Jets are a big mess. And how about the Cowboys getting upset by the Cardinals? That, to me, was a surprise. I mean, the Cardinal team, everybody was assuming they're going to tank, and obviously because they want that number 1 overall pick. And the Cowboys getting humiliated in Arizona, and obviously you got to wonder now, did the Arizona Cardinals actually found their vulnerabilities? I think they may have had, and obviously losing Diggs on defense for the Cowboys is really now a bigger factor than anybody anticipated. So it is tough to say right now where this Cowboys team stands. Look, they're still a good football team, but now you got to wonder, without having Diggs, is that defense now become vulnerable? And then you got to look at a couple other things that went on during week number 3. Obviously, the Bengals in a must-win game, they got the victory that they needed. Obviously, a lot of questions on Joe Burrow's calf to see if he can still play. And obviously, the one thing, I hate to talk about this really because I'm a fan of this football team, and you can tell by those pillows I have behind me, the Chargers. The Vikings out-chargered the Chargers of all things. Coach Brendan Staley again going for it on 4th down in their own territory, on their own 24-yard line, on a 4th down to try to end the football game. They didn't even get it. And the way the defense played, surprisingly, their defense bailed them out. But as a frustrated person who follows this team, Brandon Staley has to go. I'm sorry. They were lucky to get a win, and obviously they got the Raiders, and that's not even a sure victory coming up this coming Sunday for this Charger team, given the fact that Brandon Staley's boneheaded decisions and his... Look, let me make one thing perfectly clear. Analytics in the NFL has to go. I'm sorry. I am a person who will always be a big fan of good old-fashioned football, having a balanced offense and a damn good defense. You got to have a balanced offense, a mixture of passing and the running game. And that is one of the reasons why I have a gripe with analytics now. That crap needs to go in the NFL. I'm sorry. Anyways, a lot of things went on in week number 3. I got to get into week number 4 now. All right, let's begin with key game number 1. It is the Thursday night game, and this is a big one too. It is the going into the NFC North. It is the Detroit Lions versus the Green Bay Packers. The Lions are a slight 1-point favorite, but it's definitely going to go to you pick them this Thursday for sure. I don't think there's a clear-cut favorite in this one here. Game is a 50-50 toss-up here. It's a huge toss-up and obviously I think the winner of this football game pretty much is going to have control of the division. Jared Goff was 22 of 33, 243 yards, 1 touchdown, and 1 interception in a dominating win against the Falcons last Sunday. And then for the Packers, Jordan Love, 22 of 44, 259 yards, 1 touchdown, and 1 interception. In a game that the Packers had to come from behind to win, they trailed 17-0 after halftime, and they didn't get any, and it took them a while for that offense to get going. I think they got fortunate that Derek Carr got hurt against for the Saints, and that's one of the reasons why the Packers were fortunate enough that their offense stalled. This is a 50-50 pick here because this is definitely, Jordan Love is starting to show signs of being a good quarterback. But the way the Lions defense played against the Falcons, they're pretty scared. Their defense is kind of for real. And if they play hungry like they did against the Falcons and all that, they did a good job on Ritter last week. Who's to say how much they'll get to Jordan Love in this football game? Expect a low-scoring game in this one here. I don't think this will be like a shootout in any way. I think this is going to be, in terms of defense-wise, I think this will be more on defense in this football game. I could see this being like a 20-17 type of football game in this one here. It's a tough pick here. This is a 50-50 pick here. You can't be sure on this one here. And this is obviously for control of the NFC North Division this early in the season. So who am I going to pick in this one here? I'm going to go with the Detroit Lions here. That defense, the way they played against Atlanta, if they can get to Jordan Love the way they did with Ritter and last week against the Falcons, I like the Detroit Lions and their chances. Even though on a short week, even though on a short weekend, they're on the road. I like the way that Dan Campbell's got this football team going. And in a must-win game they had to have last Sunday here, I think they're as hungry as they're going to be. I think, to me, this Packers team hasn't seen a defense like the Lions yet. And I think, to me, the Lions win in a close game here. I think that defense will definitely play a role in this one here. I like the Lions to beat the Packers in this one here. The Lions over the Packers. All right, key game number 2. It's the Atlanta Falcons versus the Jacksonville Jaguars. The Jaguars are a 3-point favorite in this one here, and I think that number should probably be much lower. I'll get into my reasons in just a minute. Now, Ritter for the Falcons was 21 of 38, 201 yards, no touchdowns. Luckily, no interceptions last week. Obviously, just got pounded last week by that Lion defense. Now, Trevor Lawrence and the Jaguars offense has really struggled. They got embarrassed last week by the Houston Texans. Lawrence was 27 of 40, 279 yards, 1 touchdown, and 1 interception. This is a game that the Jaguars desperately need this game, given the fact that the AFC South is a winnable division, and they're supposed to be the heavy favorites to win this division, and yet in their last 2 games, I expected them to struggle against the Chiefs. The Chiefs are the defending champs for a reason, but I did not expect them to get humiliated by the Texans. There's no question that offense has got to get going in this game. Atlanta's the Jaguars defense got to get much better. And obviously with this game in London, this is going to be in London this coming Sunday. And a game that the Jaguars desperately have to try to make sure they don't go down to 1-3 here in a division that is so bad. It's really tough to say for who comes out of this the winner here, given the fact that Atlanta's running game is pretty decent and all. But I think the Jaguars finally turn it around in this one here. I don't really buy the Atlanta Falcons that much, even though they're kind of a favorite to be a wild card team this year. But I think this is a matter for the Jacksonville Jaguars. They got to play desperate. I think this is a desperate football team right now to get back on track, even though it's only early in the season here. Trevor Lawrence, I think, will get the offense going this time. I just can't. I think it's kind of hard for me to see them go at 1-3 right now, given the fact that they did a good job last year maintaining a decent record. I think that offense will finally get it going here. I don't trust Atlanta's defense all that much. I think the Jaguars will win in a very, very, very close game. This is definitely going to be a close game, but I think in a game that the Jaguars have to have, I'm going to pick the Jaguars in this one here. Expect this game to be very close in this one here. Trevor Lawrence, I think, will get that offense going. I think, to me, this is going to be a very close game here. I'm going to pick the Jaguars over the Falcons here. Jaguars -3. All right, key game number 3. Another key game going into the AFC North. It is the Baltimore Ravens versus the Cleveland Browns. The Browns are actually a favorite by 2.5 here, but that number is definitely going to go to 2, maybe 1.5, and it wouldn't surprise me goes to 1. Lamar Jackson for the Ravens in a stunning loss last week to the Colts. I think obviously they're definitely missing their key running back here. Obviously he's out for the season, and obviously that offense really struggled last week against the Colts. Lamar Jackson was 22 of 31, 202 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions, so that was fortunate. He didn't get a turnover. Now, Deshaun Watson, in a big victory last week, was 27 of 33, 289 yards, 2 touchdowns, and no interceptions. The Ravens have had the Browns number for quite some time, and it's been a while since the Ravens had lost to the Browns. I'm not going to say this will be a first for a while and all that. I still think the Ravens offense is just it's just a little bit, I'm going to say they're evenly matched. This is a tough one here, because Cleveland's offense is showing some signs of life. But that defense, I have a lot of questions. Their secondary, look, the secondary really played well against the Titans last week. But Lamar Jackson, with his mobility and the fact that he can get the offense going here, you got to wonder about how Cleveland's secondary will be able to keep Lamar Jackson at bay. This game is a toss-up here. It's a tough one here. Obviously, this is to see who will stay in a first place tie, more than likely, in the AFC North division. It's a tough pick here, but my questions regarding Cleveland's secondary, you got to wonder if they're going to be able to keep Lamar Jackson at bay, given his ability. I'm going to go with the Ravens here. I'm going to go with kind of an upset here. And the Ravens' offense, I think, is going to be desperate. They're a game that they desperately want to win here, given the fact that Cleveland is more of a favorite in this one here. I think the Ravens will, in a very close game. This is going to be another one I expect to be very close. I think it comes down to a field goal. I'm going to pick the Ravens here over the Browns. I think the Ravens here, they'll get the offense going. I don't think they'll make the same mistakes they made last week against the Colts, but this will definitely be a very close game. It's going to be low scoring in this one too. I can see it. I'm going to pick the Ravens here. It's a tough pick here. It could go either way. I'm going to pick the Ravens at +2.5 to beat the Cleveland Browns on this one here. And finally, key game number 4, a one that I've been waiting to talk about here. This is a big one, a very big one here this early in the season. And we're going into the AFC East. And you know what I'm talking about. The Miami Dolphins versus the Buffalo Bills. The Bills are a slight 2.5-point favorite in this one here. That number will definitely go to 2, and it will definitely maybe go down to 1.5. This is now going to be division. The Dolphins now are in division play now. So now this is where it's going to be the real test now against the Bills. Tua was 22 of 26. He didn't play all that much in the second half, given the fact that that they beat the crap out of the Broncos last week, so he didn't have to play much in the second half. Was 23 of 26, 309 yards, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions. Josh Allen in a big win over the Commanders last week, 20 of 32, 218 yards, 1 touchdown, and 1 interception. There's no way in no how this will be a dominance by the Miami Dolphins. It'll not be a 70-burger like it was last week in Denver. Buffalo's defense is finally starting to get back on track. And they did a fantastic job on the Commanders last week. They did a great job of holding them at bay and only holding the Commanders to 3 points. I think it was 3 or 10. One of those factors here. You would think that Miami's offense is starting to finally get on a groove, and they seem to be a little more better than the way the Bills are playing offensively. But until you dethrone the AFC East champions, this is going to be a tough one here. I don't think it's going to be a high-scoring game. I think it's going to be an all-out grinding football game here. It's going to be a close game. I don't think this will be coming into a factor that Tyreek Hill is going to go off on that Buffalo secondary. I think that this Buffalo secondary will have a plan for Tyreek Hill. Even though he's one of the fastest wide receivers in the league, I think, to me, they're going to find a way to make him make him frustrated in this football game. It's a tough pick here. This is definitely for control of the division. And it's really tough to say how this plays out here. Because it's a 50-50 pick here. This should be a very good one in Buffalo. And I'm going to pick the Bills here. I want to see what Miami can do against Buffalo. Now, they did beat them. They did beat them once last year, but that was in Miami, and it was early in the season. This one's in Buffalo here, and I think home field is going to play a role in this one here. And I believe that the Bills are. I think they've been more waiting for this one to happen because they know the Dolphins are a threat to win the division. I'm going to pick the Bills in this one here. It's going to be a very, very close game. I think the Bills pull it off. They win by a field goal in this one here. I'm going to take the Bills at -2.5. Bills to beat the Dolphins. All right, everybody, check the description below for all of my Week 4 picks here. And I will talk to you guys next week when I make my picks for Week number 5. Take care and enjoy your NFL weekend.